In the constantly changing world of fundability, the big question is this: how are entrepreneurs and real estate investors like us, ones who want to grow our businesses and who are tired of paying for really expensive alternative lending, how do we tap into the most inexpensive money available and do it without the hassle of typical borrowing? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. Welcome to the Get Fundable podcast with your host, Merrill Chandler.
Welcome, everyone, to the Get Fundable podcast. I'm your host, Merrill Chandler, and today we've got a really powerful episode about how to interpret your Equifax consumer disclosure. So when we come back, we're going to dive right in. I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to walk through this. So if you're listening, go ahead and take a listen, because I'll be as descriptive as I possibly can. But this is one of those things where you want to see what we're talking about, and you're going to be able to go in and watch this thing later in full video mode. I highly recommend it. So in a moment, we'll be right back and get started. Welcome back, everybody. Merrill Chandler, your host of the Get Fundable podcast. And as I said, we're going to be doing a deep dive into interpreting and understanding how to read your Experian consumer disclosure. Now, in the previous episode of, I believe it's episode 2 of the Into the Darkness or Into the Madness series. I guess sometimes it could feel a little dark, depending on what's on your profile. But Into the Madness on episode 2 is how to read or how to order your 3 consumer disclosure files for each from Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. In this one, I want you to pull out your particular consumer disclosure, and I'm going to be reviewing a sample file that's been redacted, but you'll get the idea. So I want you to pull yours out so you can see kind of what you're up against, because our objective is to create all of the data points. First of all, know what the credit bureaus are reporting about us, and understand the data points that are either getting in our way or adding to our fundability, or completely getting in our way. So I've got some examples of that. So let's get started here. I'm going to share my screen right now, and off to the races we go. So here we are. Let's take a look at our credit report. Now, this one is, again, a sample credit report from Equifax. 2 of the things we need to know is they only use first and last name. They do not use even if you've established your personal borrower identity with a middle initial, full middle name. For the front of this cover, they're only using the first and last name. But the report confirmation, each one of the credit bureaus have it. What some call it a report ID, some call it a file identification. Equifax calls it a report confirmation number. This is the number that you would include in any disputes of the data points that we're going to be discussing here today. Let's go to number 1, the summary of accounts. And this is kind of the summary, but it's not very good. You're going to find better in MyFICO, your MyFICO.com credit profile. You're going to see it differently in Equifax and TransUnion and Experian. Much better reporting, but I want to point out some interesting things to show you. If you have gone through the exercise we did in protecting your identity, we did a whole episode on that. Notice it says file blocked for promotional purposes. So this is one of those great things that tell us that I have opted out of the credit bureau mailings, and it is represented here on Equifax. So we want to make sure the credit file status, we want to make sure that it says that. Now, if it says freeze on there, then that means you have put a freeze on it through some coaching from somewhere, but just know that you are completely unfundable if you have a freeze on your credit profile. It's just the facts. Lenders, especially in automatic underwriting mode, are never going to check your profile if there's a freeze on it, because what that means is they have to call you manually and establish your identity. That's what a freeze means. And if you are a lender, you aren't going to go through the hassle of that. You can't get a mortgage when there's a freeze on your credit profile. So just so you know, there are workarounds to all this that we discuss in my book, in the boot camp, in other podcasts, everywhere. I talk about how to do this. And Sky, make sure that we have how to freeze and unfreeze your accounts on our podcast list. She's capturing that. And this episode is once again produced by Sky Copier, my content manager and production guru for all of our podcasts. So, credit file status, file block for promotional purposes. Make sure that make sure that you do not have freeze there, or you're going to ultimately need to unfreeze it for changing things on your profile and create more opportunity. Now, there is also, notice it gives you the average age of the account, the length of the history. So this is a younger file. It shows the oldest account as U.S. Bank, but the most recent account as this SoFi Lending Corporation. So it's giving you kind of the oldest and the youngest, and then what the average age are. Now, when you look at the credit accounts, notice that the revolving accounts, it shows how many are open, balances, what are the total balances between all three revolving accounts, what the available credit is, and what the total credit limits are between all three of those. And your debt, they call it debt to credit. This is Equifax's term for utilization. So utilization is is always in play, but utilization, debt to credit in this case, utilization is also a function of your mortgage and or installment. So this lender does not have a mortgage account, or this borrower does not have a mortgage account, but the installment loans, total balance, the total available which is the difference between the balance and the original borrowing amount. So it's not available, it's just what's been paid down already. But notice, debt to credit, the utilization of these two installment accounts is 27%. Check your report. What is the total installment? Because if it's less than 50%, you're not getting all the juice that installment loans can contribute to your file. Straight out of the mouth of the FICO team is that if it's over 24 months old, and if it is if it's under 50% balance, as we've discussed in previous episodes, then you're not getting all the juice that this loan can give you. So between these two, is 27%, and ultimately we want both of them to be. This average to be over 50%. Because that means we want each individual loan to be over 50% if you're looking for those extra points. It shows the payment amounts and the total payments. Now, we're not going to be going through, we'll be going through each of these sections, but what I need you to see is that there are consumer statements, personal information, inquiries, what is the most recent inquiry, and that was the purchase of a MyFICO updated advanced credit monitoring profile, and then then there's public records and collections. So we'll be going through each one of these sections as we get to them. Now let's go down to number 2, which is revolving accounts. Now the revolving account shows what the bank, what the formal bank reporting, the bank and how it's reported to the profile. Wells Fargo Bank Card Services. Now the status is paid as agreed, right? The debt to credit ratio, the utilization in this case, is 9% on this particular card. Reported balance is of 5,000, it's 444. So it's under 10%, right? It's that 9%. So now what they're measuring, now this is important. This is where your 24-month look back period comes into play. Notice it goes through balance, available credit, scheduled payment, actual payment, high credit, credit limit, and a past due, activity designator, and comment. Let's go through each one of these. Now, the balance, it says, is in April. This is at the time of reporting. This is where your reporting date comes into play, as we've discussed in previous episodes. So April, it was 45. May, it was 16, 450, and you just show how it grows and it diminishes so that 2018, 2019, etc. So you see the ebb and flow of this particular borrower. Ultimately, we want the same amount. A highly fundable profile is where we're showing that at the reporting date, there's no more than 7% being reported to the bureaus. If you are in the coaching programs, then there's a specific balance to carry every single month. But for just your purposes, general purposes, less than 7%. It needs to be reported on that reporting date. See the previous episode about, I think the episode's called the great lenders withhold, right? They're keeping secret that reporting date is so vital. Now, in most of the credit reports that I've reviewed, the available credit is, even on a revolving account, is not reported here because they're giving a general summation of all of the available credit in the snapshot of when you pull this. Now, remember, as we talked about in the Into the Madness episode 2 or number 2, that's where we talk about how to order your consumer disclosure files, and which are the raw data files, and how to and that these are available once per year. All right, so we're coming down here. Available credit. I haven't seen that completed or filled out with data points in it on a number of credit reports that I visited. So it may not be a thing, and it's being used further up that we already reviewed. Now, the scheduled payment. Notice these two together. There's in 2018, in April, the scheduled payment on the balance of 45 was $20. All right. Minimum payment. Then let's look down. An actual payment was $300, which is what brought it down to total of 45. So each one of these things, these are key indicators used as part of the 24-month look back period, because we're going to see that 2000 April, May, June is 3 months. Then through September is 6 months, and then through April again is 12 months, and then 24, etc. Discount. So what we need to do is we want to see what we need to be aware of in the 24-month look back period is they're looking at the actual balance. They're looking at what you owe, the scheduled payment, which is always the minimum payment. And then they're looking at the actual payment. That contributes to your fundability. That tells the lender, and therefore other lenders who are pulling this data, your future lenders who are pulling this data, what your commitment is to keeping those moderate and lower balances. All right. So those are all vital. And notice 300, then 30, then 75, then 1,000, and each one of those 15 was scheduled, and in August 1,000 was paid. So leaving a balance of 420 after that payment. Now, what we need to make sure that we understand is that, as we talked about in previous episodes on revolving accounts, we never make the minimum payment. This is why I tell you that. They have a scheduled payment. If you make that scheduled payment, you send a message about your ability to pay. And we do not want to send, even if it's just a few dollars more, we never want to send the message that you can only afford a minimum payment. So there's the actual payment. Then there's high credit. Now, high credit, notice this borrower had a credit limit. Notice the credit limit here says that it is $5,000. It's been $5,000 this entire period. There's a couple of blanks that aren't there, so we have data that's missing. So one of the things that we would want to do is make sure that those, since it's an open account, we want to get those data points missing, because guess what? For June, can't calculate utilization. We can't calculate some of the 24 look back numbers. And so we want to get those filled in. And that's communication with the credit bureaus. Now, notice here though, high credit. High credit is that high watermark. What does it push through? If you've got a $5,000 balance and you or limit, and high credit punches through 525, what that means is there was a point in time where this borrower charged past 95% of the limit. And then remember how we talked about in a different episode where you never want to go above 95%. I prefer 90%, but no way do we want to go over 95% because the lender adds interest after they close the statement. So if you charge $4,950, they're going to add interest after that, right? And that is what pops this over, and you end up with a high limit that is no bueno. Ultimately, we don't want this high limit to have ever passed that 40% mark. I mean, a perfectly executed profile is where high credit is never more than 40%. But we see that not knowing the rules of the game and thinking, oh yeah, and then we're like, oh, I'm over the limit. You get an over limit notice and you pay it off and you think everything's copacetic. But the message is that that you hit it in May, it was 525 and it carries with you. Notice the full 25 to 24-month look back period registers that same high credit. So in my circles, in coaching clients and students, I teach you guys need to dispute and see if they will reduce that to a more reasonable, and that's a phone call, of course, to the lender. You want to see if you can show over 3 months, 6 months, 12 months that you've stayed under the 40% or otherwise. That is what you want to see if you can negotiate down from high credit. I can't guarantee a result. It has happened. So in my world, it's always worth the phone call. Now, notice this is a current account. It's paid as agreed, as we've discussed. So there are no past due amounts. Now, activity designator, I've never seen this filled out. So I don't know if it's specific to Equifax, but if it's reported to lenders, it's supposed to be reported to us, but I've never seen the activity designator completed or any of those data points complete. If you have one, then send me tell me about it and give me your email address or I don't know how to best contact, but if you're down, I want to reach out. I want to find out what they're measuring because I've never seen it filled out. And if you've got one, then I'm all in. I want to explore that further, and then we'll add it to our body of knowledge here on Get Fundable podcast. All right, now the next one are comments, and these comments. Notice I'm relentless. I'm relentless about disputing, especially my borrower information, right? I'm totally interested in creating everything that I need to know about how to do a borrower information. So what you want to know is, so take a look here. It says that 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, every month of 2018, every month of 2019, we're talking about these consumer disputes. So consumer disputes after resolution simply means that some activity has been done after they believe they've resolved it. It doesn't mean they won't continue to work on deleting your name variations, address variations, etc. Right? We want to make sure that that is not a thing, but that's one of the most powerful points that we need to cover is how to continue to work in removing especially erroneous identity information. That is a powerful play. All right, so let's continue now on the payment history. Notice here is the here are the indicators, right? The legend of now a check mark means that you've paid on time, as you can see right there, paid on time every single month, and it wasn't open in 2015, so of course nothing is registered. You're going to see because I've kind of mocked up a profile that has positive, negative accounts, etc. I want you guys to be able to take this isn't one credit profile and it's a fake name, right? So I want you guys to see some of them. I even used some of my information on this. So let's go to another. So let's continue. Now it goes to the next page, actually goes through the account details. So notice, here's the summary: high credit limit, 5,025 credit limit. So we know we're upside down here. This is not good. The current balance, as reported when this credit report was pulled, was 444. The actual payment amount is $150 for this particular Wells Fargo credit card. Here's what's interesting. Date opened July 24th, but date reported January 7th. Now, I tell students, I tell clients that when you're looking for your reporting date, you can start here, but I do not trust this number because it hasn't always been the exact number or date that we're looking for the reporting date. So if your lender, in this case Wells Fargo, if you call up the Credit Bureau Dispute Resolution Department and say, I want to know what the day this account is reported to the bureaus, they're going to be able to tell you what that date is they have on record. If it's this date, then remember, call 3 times. But if this counts as one time, so if you get the same answer from 2 live calls and the report says January 7th, then count January 7th as the reporting date. If it's the date between January 6th and 7th, because some have a window, then watch for that as well. But I'm telling you right now, make sure you get the same answer 3 times. And the date of last payment was January 1st. Scheduled monthly payment. And notice there's the scheduled monthly payment here, and we have these, and then what the actual payment was there. So this is kind of what a positive account looks like. So I pulled in a different report, and let's go to a closed Wells Fargo account. You'll notice that now the pages are out of sync. So in copying and pasting it, but here's what I want you to see. The account status says charged off. Now you're not going to see any account numbers, at least in or the account numbers are going to be truncated if they're here at all. So here it says it's charged off, and the charge off amount is $1,188. Debt to credit ratio, that's utilization in Equifax terms, is 79%, right? So 79%, 1188 from 1500. That is what the amount was. So that's where you are at 79% utilization. Now notice there's no balance because it's been the account is closed. Available credit schedule payment. So we're going to scroll all the way down until we get to the payment history. Now, even you would think that amount past due, some of you on your reports may show an amount past due as part of that collection, but because it's charged off, and it's accurately charged off, there's no amount past due. Some of you are going to run into a situation, and be aware of it. If it continues to say $1,300 past due, it may not have been charged off yet. And if it hasn't been charged off, it's what we call a rolling late. And that rolling late could be a rolling 30, rolling 60, 90. There could be rolling 180 days late, which means your profile, and when it's being scored by FICO, your profile is literally showing a brand new 180-day late in real time. That's killing your profile. Charge-offs at least begin to age. All right. So take a look at this. Back in 2015, it was 30 days late. Then it became 30 days late 2 times in a row. then it was 60, then it was paid on time twice, then it was 30, and then 60, then 90, then 120 days late. That all through 2017, it was a charge-off. 18, it was a charge-off. January, February, and March of 2019, it's a charge-off. Okay, so those are key indicators. We need it to say charged off. If you have a charge off, it's got to say charged off. If it doesn't, then you are going to be you're truly activating a brand new late account, even if it shows charged off. Now, what's interesting is we'll look at this when we look at the other bureaus, because I'm going to use some of these same client files to show you the differences. But TransUnion is usually the best at charging off a charged-off account. Equifax and Experian sometimes will continue a rolling late, and that will create a big difference in your score range, and it is harming your fundability. So make sure that if it's charged off, look to TransUnion. If TransUnion says it's charged off and you have no other lates, then make sure that you contact those account, closed or not. Make sure you contact those lenders and get this rectified, because you cannot afford to have a rolling late. All right. Now, next, let's go to the account details. Here again, this is a closed account. It's a charge off, but it still shows the date open. It shows the date that it was reported and the date of the last payment. So then there's a date of first delinquency, September of 2015, then delinquency first reported, March of 1st of 2016. Those are two different references. And so that you know, there is date of first delinquency of when you actually went late. And let's reconcile that. The date it first went delinquent was it says September of 2015. So that is the date that it most recently went delinquent. Does that make sense? It isn't counting the delinquencies here. It's saying the date that the date of first delinquency that led to it being charged off. Now, the way the Fair Credit Reporting Act is written is that it is 90 months. It is an item can no longer stay on your credit profile from 7 years plus 6 months after the date of last delinquency or most recent delinquency. So that's what this is. The date of first delinquency is saying that it's September. That's spot on. But that September date of first delinquency, that led to it being charged off. Does that make sense? So sometimes I use the term date of last delinquency, but it's date of last delinquency that led to the charge off. So that doesn't account these guys right here. So this is a very important date if you have derogatory accounts on this profile. This date of first delinquency that led to it being charged off. So the date, it's 90 months from this date that this account can no longer be reported on your credit profile. And then the delinquency date is usually the relationship between the first delinquency date and the first delinquency when it was reported. It can be as many as 6 months. Okay. So, and once again, it shows the charge off account. So what we're looking for now then is everything that contributes to it being delinquent is the reporting, because we want accurate information. I'm not about credit repair, but I am about profile accuracy. And so we want to make sure that anything that is erroneous, inaccurate, or unverifiable cannot legally be reported on your profile. So here we are, we're doing a deep dive into it, and they're accurately reporting there, and we can reconcile. September was the date that last led, so this will be coming off in September of 2022. This item would naturally fall off the credit report, unless you maybe in your files there are other things that are associated that are completely inaccurate, and maybe it's your father's or somebody with a similar name. There's been a file merge. You've got to audit it for accuracy. If it's not accurate, or if there are complete errors, then it is on you to notify the creditor and or the credit bureaus. All right, now let's continue. In this account, number 3, there are no mortgage accounts. So we'll move on to installment loans. Now notice the installment loan here, SoFi, just so you know, SoFi will cause, now this data is not on, the data I'm about to talk about is not on your, consumer disclosure. It's a function of the metrics used by FICO. But SoFi, we know this SoFi Lending Corporation is actually triggers a consumer finance account negative indicator on your profile. Now, even though the account says paid as agreed, you can see the account numbers are very truncated, but debt to credit ratio is 29%. So for this profile, guys, it's significantly under 50% and deserves to be refinanced, or another loan, installment loan taken to replace it, because it is not helping ultimately your profile, or this profile. Now, notice the balance. If we look at what the here we go. So the high credit on installment loans, notice, never changes. It was the original loan amount. So this was a SoFi personal loan for $50,000. The scheduled payment is $1,606, but at this client has taken our advice and actually makes a higher payment amount. We always want to make a higher payment amount wherever possible. Again, not here to get you in financial trouble, but wherever possible. Notice that's rounded up $94. The idea is to get ahead of you want your payments to be ahead of the term payment plan, right? So that's one of the things that we need to get there. So as we go through here, where we can, we want to make actual payment. Never make the minimum payment, even on installment loans. We always want to be ahead just a little bit. Then coming down again, credit limit, there is none, because high credit is the determiner for installment loans. And then credit limit, amount past due, none, activity designator, etc. So we get into the payment history, and this loan was engaged in November of 2017, and it's been paid on time, etc. Let's look at the account details for an installment loan. Again, there's the installment loan indicator. It's owned individually by this borrower. The high credit was $50,000, and high credit is the highest amount that was given to the borrower. Monthly terms, current balance, actual payment amount versus the scheduled payment amount. And then notice you've got date opened and date open, but this is the date reported. Again, we recommend you find out, even for your installment loans, when that reporting date is, and go to the installment loan episodes for ways that you can get tripped up. There are some people who pay off their loan, right? They're refinancing, or they pay off the loan at what they think is 24 months, but since they don't know the reporting date, that 24th payment doesn't get reported, and you lose the 24-month look-back period. You still get credit for the 12-month, but not the 24. So go listen to that episode about how important knowing even the reporting dates of your installment accounts. And then there's the contact information for your profile. Notice this one is 25 months in, so it's just barely gone over the 24-month mark. So there's no more points coming for this loan in the time benefit portion of the point calculations by FICO, and it's also at 14,000, so it's under 25,000 is the 50% mark. So this loan is no longer contributing to this borrower's profile. So we want to make sure that in your coaching, we would tell you that it would be time, if you can, to either refinance this loan, get a new loan that pays off this balance, and re-engage. All right, let's continue. No other accounts are in here, and revolving mortgage or installment accounts. This says that child support obligation, rental agreements, things like that. If you have the what I call augmented credit reporting, where somebody's where you can subscribe and they're adding your rental payments, adding your cell phone payments, adding service provider payments to augment your profile. That is not a recommendation. We don't want you to do that because no one's going to give you a $500,000 mortgage on your cellular phone reputation. They're not going to give you a business line of credit for $100,000 based on your child support payments, right? We want to make sure that we are not augmenting. Experian Boost is called. Equifax has a product. FICO has a product. We don't want to subscribe to those. We do not want. We want only the revolving accounts, installment loans that are actual credit accounts, not service provider accounts. All right, continuing. Now, this section is if you have language while you're going down your profile, if you have language that says the consumer statement, I had identity theft. It may be true, but what you put on here is basically telling a lender, do not lend to me. This is a messy file. It's got. I have to go through the hoops of doing manual underwriting. They don't want to do manual underwriting. So there's a lot to it. Check out the getfundablebootcamp.com and find out some of the strategies for this. There's insider secrets to all of it. But the bottom line is you don't want anything on your consumer statements section, guys. You don't. You're literally telling a lender, yeah, I'm a mess over here. Don't bother. Don't lend me any money. So you've got to get these things. There are other ways to handle your your identity theft problem, fraud problems. We have an entire ebook based on making sure that you have the right tools to recover from identity theft, but one of those things is not putting statement on your profile. Do not do that because you're only getting in your own way. All right, now let's take a look at personal information. So again, I use Stephen Dan's as a kind of my nom de plume. It's my fake borrower. So notice it's actually saying that he has only one name, and there are no formerly known as in this information. Okay. There's the fake date of birth and the truncated Social Security. What it does say here is that you do not have any other identifications in your file. Now, you may already have other types. If there's a list here, those are the ones that are in your way. If you have multiple names, formerly known as, or multiple names listed, guys, these are in your way. These are the data points that I talk about everywhere in previous podcasts, in my book, in the boot camp. These are the things that are going to significantly limit your funding loans and limits, right? It's going to get you kicked out into manual underwriting. So we want to make sure that there are none. Ultimately, our end game is to have none here. Now, notice there's all in this contact information. These are the addresses, the current and former addresses reported to Equifax, right? Now they're saying it doesn't affect your credit score or rating, but it does affect underwriting. It determines whether or not you're going, and remember, underwriting is the only thing that matters. Fundability is what matters, not your score. So don't minimize that because it doesn't affect your score. That's what they say, but we see score improvements all the time from from minimizing these alternate addresses, etc. Now look at the problem here. This only says you'll see on yours that there are two. So we've erased the or redacted the street address, right? But notice the problem here. We have a Washington address in March of 2019, so that just last year. Then August 13th, Provo. Then it jumps. So notice 2019, then it goes back in time to 2015. Then it jumps ahead in time, and then back in time, ahead in time, back in time. And every one of these addresses are saying that this is the most recent reporting date for all those addresses. Guys, a lender, a human being lender, is going to have to sort through this. But an algorithm, an automatic underwriting system algorithm, no chance. They are not going to look at you for a second. This is going to get kicked out into manual underwriting, and you got to prove up, because these dates and all these different addresses are horrible. So what you want is to have no previous addresses. No previous addresses. That's what we're looking for. And then here, the employment history. Now, if you have a W-2, we want the W-2 listed. But if you have a QFE, a qualified fundable entity, that qualified fundable entity needs to be one of your employers, and either your W-2 or your deal entity, whatever else is going on. And again, we have episodes previously about building your business identity, right? Your BFID, your business funding entity identity. All right. So we got to make sure that the correct data is there. But for everybody who's working on fundability, you want your QFE to be listed here, not just a W-2 or otherwise. Now, let's take a look here under number 8. So that was number 7, personal information. We went through there. Now look at inquiries. They list on the consumer disclosure files. They have to tell you everything, right? It's all the raw data. So they split it up between hard inquiries and soft inquiries. Now, a soft inquiry is Fair Isaac. So this borrower has been ordering credit reports directly from Fair Isaac. U.S. Bank did an account review. So that's not a hard inquiry. Even Credit Karma checked in to this individual, this bureau, to see how you're doing. And then, of course, August of 2019, there was an Equifax report actually reported. I think those are the only ones that are there. All right. So hard inquiries, the only one that counts against you are hard inquiries. And in this case, there were 2. There was Mac and there was Wells Fargo. All right. Then public records. Now, public records are listed. Now, I want to show you, because under bankruptcies, we're finding fewer and fewer judgments and liens. Back in 2018, there was a huge brouhaha about the legality of public records that were being listed on individual credit profiles, because, and there's an interim process here, and LexisNexis is another consumer disclosure that we recommend folks acquire. I actually talked about ordering your LexisNexis way back when we talked about building and maintaining a powerful, fundable personal borrower ID, right? BPID. Well, in 2018, many judgments and liens were removed from individual credit reports because they didn't contain enough data. LexisNexis collects the data from the courts. LexisNexis collects data from the courts. If there's not enough data in the actual court document, LexisNexis can literally say it's a judgment, right? If there's not, there has to be 5 points of 5 points that they need in order to be able to report an account. So judgments, liens, many, if not most of them, did not pass muster. They did not have these 5 points that needed to be reported. Well, I'm going to show you an example here of a bankruptcy. Notice, date filed. Yep, we got the date filed, and we've got the bankruptcy court of San Fernando. Okay. Problem is that how much some of the data points are not included here. So this may be, because remember, some of it is name, social security number, etc. So this bankruptcy is reported because the creditor believes, or the LexisNexis is allowing it to be sent to Equifax because they have enough data points. So that's one of the things that I would look up in LexisNexis and say, are all the data points there, and is this being accurately reported? It may not be an error. Remember, it's not about just errors. Yeah, this gentleman, let's say he had a bankruptcy. Okay, that makes it not an error, but there's two other criteria. Is it being reported accurately, accuracy, and is it verifiable? So those are things we want. Profiles that are legally viable, and we're not here to artificially change your history. That's not what I'm about. Go to credit repair. I'm not interested in their strategies. What I want is an accurate profile so that I can count on it. I can optimize it. And as many of you have already seen, we have folks with less than perfect credit who still have fundable 800 profiles. So I just want it to be accurate. And if it's not accurate, then it's legally viable for removal. But I'm not here to lie, cheat, or steal about these derogatory accounts. All right. But in this case, no liens or judgments are reported. All right. Now, finally, a collection account, and there's a different section for collections, but notice that the date reported, April of 2019, but it was originally assigned in December 2017. The amount owed, right, and the status date is the same as up here. So date reported and status date are the same. The balance date is the same. So what they're doing is they're pinging this collection account to see, is that a true estimation of its current amount? And then it's an individual account that we've truncated, or they have truncated the account number, and it's a medical or healthcare. So this does end up under the HIPAA reporting. So there are ways to make sure that it's being accurately reported and not violating HIPAA rights. And then date of first delinquency. So it's saying that it first went delinquent. The delinquency that led to the charge off or collection was March 3rd of 2016, but notice December of 2017. So that was almost 18 months, 21 months difference. It was the first delinquency at this at Intermountain Healthcare was in March of 16. Then it got assigned to a collection agency on December 8th, 2017. That's literally 21 months later. Now, what's interesting that we got to understand is that in this process, these have to be deleted 90 months from this date, the date of first delinquency that led to it becoming a charge-off or a collection. So this would naturally fall off the report, paid or unpaid. It'll naturally fall off the report in 90 months from here. So that would be approximately 2016, 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 plus 6 months. So it would be March 23. So approximately September of 2023. All right. Now, the other thing we need to remember is that it is a medical account. So in FICO 9, which more and more lenders are picking up, FICO 9 does not count this medical collection as a negative account. There's no drawdown in your profile or your score for having a medical. FICO 8 and FICO 542 each classify this as a derogatory account, right, with the corresponding negative indicators. But in this case, there are no, but a FICO 9 would not count this against the borrower in the FICO scoring models. All right. And then let's go down to the final. Now, dispute file information. I'm going to tell you right now, guys, we've talked about this earlier, but do not, and they are encouraging you to dispute online. So if the lenders or the especially the credit bureaus tell you to do something or recommend something, it's already suspect in my world. So we want to make sure, do send in written letters, certified mail, no return receipt requested, no verification. Do not use the online, because they squeeze you into a certain response, and we do not want that response to be squeezed. You need to write a letter. And my bootcamp people get suggested PPID letters, the dispute letters that talk about disputing your identity data points and all those things. So make sure you do letters. Do not use this. And then there are additional summary of your rights under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. This is most of the stuff you have already heard just in general in the world. Take a look at it if you want to know more. It doesn't impact, it impacts your rights, but not your fundability, because it's just explaining things that we have discovered or that they need to legally disclose to you. All right. So your rights under state law, different states have different purposes, and your state will, your report will include your state. You guys, this has been an awesome opportunity to share how to interpret and read your Equifax consumer disclosure file, the raw data file, and I'm thrilled to be able to spend the time with you. And remember, we're going to be doing TransUnion and Experian here over the next little bit. Those will be episodes 3 or 4 and 5. No, 3 and 4 of the Into the Madness series. So that'll be episode 4 and 5. This is episode 3 of the Into the Madness episode. So you guys have a spectacular rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next episode of Get Fundable podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Get Fundable podcast. Please leave comments, because Merrill would love to read about your aha moments from this episode. And be sure to visit getfundable.com to read our blog, get important links, join our community, and much, much more, like ordering Merrill's tell-all book that is changing the world, The New F Word. And you got to tell your friends about this podcast, because we want them to get fundable too.